that this is simply saying that our local jails, our policing efforts, as well as our technology, should all be fighting local crimes. That's all I want. Local cops, local crimes.
That was Democratic New York Governor Kathy Hochul talking about how she wants state and local police to focus on fighting crime, not assisting civil immigration detainers issued by federal officials. Welcome back to the States. I'm Greg Bishop. Wednesday, Hochul announced that she is tapping millions of dollars in taxpayer funds to provide legal representation for migrant children facing deportation. The Center Square contributor Chris Wade reports Hochul announced the new infusion of state funding will provide legal assistance for roughly 1,400 unaccompanied migrant children navigating federal immigration proceedings. Now, under the plan, the New York State Office for New Americans will enter into contracts totaling $7.25 million with a coalition of legal services providers led by the Hispanic Federation to support children previously served under the federal program. Now, to the question of whether funding immigration navigators and representation incentivizes unaccompanied minors entering the country illegally, Hochul pushed back.
No, I reject that because this law has been in place for 20 years. It was signed by President Bush. So this has been a long-standing policy of our country to say that when a child shows up at our doorsteps, that we at least give them the dignity of having representation in a court of law. That is fundamental to who we are. So I reject that. Also, I do think that the border is, according to the president, closed.
Now, the move from New York comes in response to the Trump administration's decision to end a contract with one particular organization which contracts with legal service providers to represent migrant children. Now, Hochul was joined by New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who boasted that his administration has spent $153 million on legal representation for immigrants, expanding the Know Your Rights outreach in dozens of languages, and strengthening the firewall between city agencies and federal immigration enforcement.
We will confront these horrors and this pain with the action and solidarity that it demands. And in doing so, we will show the federal government that we reject the inhumanity of their decisions and their small view of what this nation can be.
But the infusion of taxpayer money to the Immigrant Legal Aid Fund, it comes as the Trump administration ramps up its mass deportation campaign across the country. Advocates have raised concerns that unaccompanied minors facing deportation proceedings are lacking the legal representation needed to navigate the federal immigration court system. Under federal law, the government's required to facilitate legal representation for unaccompanied children under its care who are facing deportation proceedings. Now, earlier this month, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services awarded a $150 million contract to give legal representation to migrant children traveling alone to the U.S. to a Texas-based firm that critics point out has ties to the Trump administration. Now, nationwide, more than 20,000 accompanied migrant children are at risk of losing legal counsel after the Trump administration canceled Arcadia's contract. But there's also an effort in New York to keep local law enforcement from assisting federal law enforcement in immigration matters. Here's the governor.
We are not disallowing cooperation with local law enforcement when it comes to crimes. We will protect immigrant communities and longstanding New Yorkers against criminals. We always have, always will. So you'll not hear them say that because it doesn't fit into their narrative. But what I don't think is right is that all the support that I, as a New Yorker, New York governor, with the legislature, provide for law enforcement, $4 billion to keep this state safe, to protect our streets, protect our subway, $4 billion just from our source alone. I don't think that that should be given to local police departments to prosecute individuals, go after people under civil immigration laws, when that's ICE's job. That's an $85 billion agency. They have more than enough money, way too much money. They should not have that much money.
Now, earlier this morning, U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche, he said the Trump administration will continue to be steadfast in enforcing immigration law.
I think it's important to talk about the work that this department has done protecting and defending the integrity of our borders. and the enforcement of our immigration laws. It's not optional to do that. It's foundational to the rule of law, to the safety of our communities.
Now, for the latest on these and other stories around the ongoing immigration enforcement and the taxpayer cost, be sure to subscribe for the free newsletter at thecentersquare.com.